Okay, we're ready to start.
Very good. I would like to call this April 28th meeting of the Anaheim Public Utility Board to order. I would ask that we do a verbal roll call. Peggy?
Board Member Abdul-Rahman,
I'm here.
Board Member Baraldi.
Here.
Board Member Bala. I don't see him as present. Board Member Gaona.
Here.
Board Member Campos Kurtz.
Here.
Vice Chair Seymour.
Here.
Chair Madrano is absent. Let the record show that we have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda would be public comments. Members of the public can submit comments electronically for board consideration, or members of the public can provide in-person comments on any item under the jurisdiction of this board, or provide public comments on any agenda item. When recognized by the chairperson, please state your name and address for the record. The time limit established by the board for speakers is 2 minutes per speaker. Have we received any public comments?
We have not.
We have not received any public comments, so I'll close this portion of the meeting and move on to approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which is March 24th, 2021. So I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move a motion.
I'll second.
Sounds good. We have a motion made and a second. All in favor, say aye.
We have to do a roll call vote on this.
Oh, yes, I forgot. Peggy, roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote for item number 2. Motion made by Board Member Abdul-Rahman, second made by Board Member Campos Kurtz. Board Member Abdul-Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Baraldi,
Aye.
Board Member Follow, Board Member Guyana,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz,
Aye.
Vice Chair Seymour.
Aye.
The vote is 5 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next item, presentation of fiscal year 2021-22 budget.
All right, Brian, you want to do this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dooku. Tonight, we will be presenting to you our fiscal year 2022 budget. There is no action tonight. This is solely a presentation to talk about the budget, answer any questions. The action will be at the May Public Utility Board meeting. Just for your reference, when we were setting up this budget, we did assume that the resort would be slowly opening as of July 1st, and then ramping up through the end of the calendar year, and then things be fully open at the beginning of the next calendar year. So about half the fiscal year. So there is still some softening in the retail sales. But I'm going to introduce Andrew Wynn to present the budget to you. He is our budget administrator. With that, Andrew.
Thank you, Brian, and good evening, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the board. This evening, I'll run through our proposed budget with you all. Everything covered tonight is included in your budget book at your place setting. As Brian stated, no action needs to be taken tonight. You'll have a full month to review your budget, our budget, before we ask for your recommendation next month. So before I jump into the numbers, I'm going to do a quick review about our budget cycle and the common terms that we use. So starting at the top right with the proposed budget, this is what has been prepared for next fiscal year, but has not been formally approved yet. The proposed budget is what I'll review tonight, and it's what we'll ask the board to recommend to City Council for adoption. Now, once City Council approves the budget in June, it becomes known as the adopted budget. The adopted budget can be thought of as a fixed amount of money that Council has authorized for us to spend. During the year, the adopted budget can change, such as when Council amends a budget, or most notably when unspent funds from unfinished projects are carried over or added to the adopted budget. At this point, the budget is referred to as the amended budget. After half the year is over, we usually forecast how much will be expended or collected in cash by fiscal year end. This is typically done in January, and is referred to as the projected budget. So if you look at the slide, you'll notice that I colored the projected and amended circles blue, while the proposed and adopted circles are green. Both the projected and amended budget include carryovers, while the proposed and adopted budget do not, which makes this grouping suitable for an apples to apples comparison. For our department, carryovers can add at least 40 million to the budget, so it's important we do an appropriate comparison.
And Andrew, can you explain what a carryover is, please?
So a carryover is like, we just had the groundwater treatment project go to council last night. That was 67 million. So it's pretty much close to the end of the fiscal year, and that project will not be completed. So what happens is unfinished, this project is unfinished. So pretty much the bulk of those funds will be added to next fiscal year. And we pretty much say it's carried over to next fiscal year. So it gets added to next year's budget. Are there any other questions so far on the budget terms that I've just covered? Alrighty, so I'll now walk you through how we expect to end the fiscal year. So again, the amended budget has already been approved, and the projected budget is what we're forecasting to end the year at. So starting at the very top with electric retail sales, our retail sales, specifically from large commercial industrial customers, was severely impacted by the COVID-19 restrictions. As Brian stated, our initial forecast assumed that these restrictions would be lifted by July of 2020, when in fact they were lifted in late January of this year. Although our residential sales saw a boost because more people were working from home, the large variance you see here is still because 70% of our retail revenue is derived from our commercial and industrial customers. Electric non-retail sales, although our retail sales did get hammered, our wholesale revenue was much higher than anticipated. And this is not only due to consistent CAISO demand, but also from hot and extreme weather days in August, early September, when Labor Day weekend, we saw 110 degrees weather. In early September, in mid-February, when the central US experienced a severe winter storm. These extreme weather events allowed us to sell more surplus gas and energy than we expected. Other electric revenue, the large variance that you see here is because we expect to recognize less rate stabilization adjustment, or RSA revenue. The RSA recovers variations in power supply and environmental mitigation costs from our customers. The balance is held in a regulatory account until we need to recognize it. We were really fortunate this year to see higher than expected wholesale revenue, but we're also expecting to see significant savings on our power supply. This will allow us to recognize a smaller amount of RSA and defer recognizing the rest until it's needed. Water revenue, we're forecasting water revenue to be under our forecast by less than 3%. Again, statewide restrictions from the pandemic impacted our industrial commercial sales, although not to the extent felt by electric. Turning to our expenditures now, operating labor, we're anticipating to save nearly $4.4 million, largely as a result of the city's accelerated separation program. In all, we saw 27 retirements from this program. I'll talk about our plan for some of these vacancies in a few minutes. Supplies and equipment, there's a 10% variance here that reflects various unspent items, including technology projects that will be deferred to next fiscal year, as well as unspent contingency budgeted for repair of electric and water infrastructure. Power supply, our power supply costs are expected to be 24 million under budget. Refinancing our bonds, our Canyon Power Project bonds, and recognizing more cap and trade credits will save 14 million this year. Our water supply costs are expected to be under budget by about 5%. As I mentioned, soft demand from commercial and industrial customers resulted in less water purchases. We expect debt service costs to come in on target. For our capital expenditures, the variance for our capital expenditures is due to multi-year capital projects. Capital projects are budgeted entirely in a single fiscal year. This is done to ensure that projects are properly financed at the very outset. Any unspent funds from any incomplete projects are carried over into the next fiscal year. One thing that I want to point out is that you'll see that our total expenditures exceeds our revenue, and that's because our revenue was intended to cover our operating expenses, while our bond proceeds still funds the bulk of our capital expenditures. Are there any questions right now about our projections for the year? Well, each year we usually show a few accomplishments from the past year. This time I wanted to try something a little different given the unique circumstances we all experienced. My team put together a 2.5-minute video that covers some of the events from the past year, and we hope you enjoy it.
Tiana was really good. I learned so much in such a small amount of time. There's going to be things I learned from her that I will carry on, for the rest of my life.
Best thing about owning an EV is being able to do my part, preserve the environment, protect my community.
Are there any questions about anything you guys saw in the video? More details about these items in the video are found in your budget books, but I can answer any questions if there are any.
I don't have a question, but 70% of the streetlights being LEDs is substantial. That's real progress.
Very much so, yes.
Yes.
And a lot of it was done with internal staff as well. So
Yes.
Credit to Janet's team.
Good job.
So now we'll turn to our proposed budget. I'll compare the proposed budget with the adopted budget because both of these do not include carryovers, so it's a more appropriate comparison. Electric retail sales, although the economic outlook has improved because of more vaccinations and loosening restrictions, our forecast is conservative and assumes that it will take a few months before our industrial and commercial customers' load return to pre-pandemic levels. One way to think of this is that even though attractions and events are opening up again, it'll likely take some time to fill up the hotel rooms in the resort. Electric non-retail sales, although our wholesale revenue is forecast to increase about $9 million. primarily because we expect to have more excess power to sell next year. We had one of our power generation sources that was out on planned maintenance this fiscal year. That should be available all of next fiscal year. New bonds at this time, we anticipate the need to issue 50 million in bonds to fund the replacement or upgrade of critical electric infrastructure. If market conditions are accommodative, we'll bring this back to the board for approval next fiscal year. Our bond funds typically last us approximately 2.5 to 3 years. Other electric revenue, again, the variance here is because we plan to recognize less RSA revenue. As you can see in the table, we expect our power supply costs to drop dramatically next fiscal year. Because Canyon Power Project bonds were refinanced, we'll be saving 14 million in 2 years. These expense reductions allow us to recognize a smaller amount of RSA and defer the rest for a rainy day. Water revenue, we're forecasting that water revenue will increase by about 11 million. Approximately 5 million of this reflects reimbursement from the Orange County Water District for groundwater treatment capital expenses. Part of the increase is also due to a rate adjustment we had earlier in the year. Turning off groundwater wells and importing more water has had a significant impact on our expenses, as well as the corresponding revenue that's needed to sustain our operations. Regarding demand, we're only forecasting a marginal uptick in water demand of less than 2%, which is based on a more favorable economic outlook. Turning to our expenditures now, operating labor. In addition to showing you our operating labor budget, we also wanted to show you the vacancies we're keeping in a holding unit to generate savings. You'll see that the vacancies in our holding unit total nearly 6.3 million, which includes 32 full-time and 9 part-time vacant positions, which is about 10% of our total authorized positions. Our plan is to keep these positions vacant until a need arises and we see visible signs of improvement in the local economy, as well as our department's finances. Supplies and equipment, our budget here is proposed to increase by approximately 7.7 million. Funds in this category will go towards items that have been deferred, such as upgrades to our customer information system and replacements to our motorized equipment. Power supply costs are decreasing by over 17 million, primarily because of refinance and retired debt associated with power generating projects. As I mentioned before, these expense reductions on our power supply are significant in reducing our overall operating costs. Our water supply costs are proposed to increase to a total of $55.3 million. We expect to import 3/4 of our water next fiscal year. Efforts towards constructing groundwater treatment facilities continue so that we can restore lower cost groundwater as our primary water supply source. We'll touch on this project a little bit later. Debt service is proposed to increase by 6.3 million. This reflects electric utilities cost of a proposed 50 million bond issuance, including interest payments. As I mentioned, we'll provide more details next fiscal year if market conditions are accommodative and we end up taking this financing route. In total, you can see that our proposed operating expenditures are flat for next fiscal year. We are proposing, however, to increase our capital investments by nearly 17 million. Next year's capital investments underscore the value of reliability and resiliency, and we'll talk about some of these investments in a minute. For right now, I want to highlight that our proposed budget is balanced. If you take our total revenue and deduct new bonds from the equation, you get about 525 million, which exceeds our operating expenses of 511 million. Are there any questions before I show our electric and water budget?
Any questions by any of the commissioners?
My only question would have to do with bonds. I thought we
Yes.
were trying to cash flow with more of our strategy. Did that get changed due to COVID and other unexpected things that occurred?
I'm sorry, I can hear you.
Said I think weren't we planning on getting away from the bond?
Yeah, we are. And so, especially in water, we're moving away from bonds. So you see this is only electric bond issuance, but we can't necessarily move completely away. We do plan to have, I think, 2 more bond issuances in this decade, and this is one of them for electric. So yes, that is the plan. So it's a balance between rates and bonds, and especially during the pandemic and with interest rates as low as they are, it seems that the right answer right now is bonds. but that's not always the case. So we also have the line of credit we can lean on if the bond market isn't behaving as we would like.
And the
So,
other thing,
with battery storage coming up, the request may actually be more than this because we have a battery storage project coming. So right now we have a placeholder for $50 million, but it could be larger to accommodate battery storage.
very good. And then great job, by the way, on refinancing. Are there other bonds we can look at refinancing this year as well with the
Yeah,
conditions, right?
so with Canyon especially, typically our strategy has always been to backload the savings
Yes.
and keep the payment the same. But considering the financial situation, we changed that strategy and refinanced our Canyon bonds in order to front load as much of the savings as we could in fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, because we realized that was a more urgent need.
Good job.
Any other questions? I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
The vacancy held number of a little over $6 million, is that number if we filled them all?
Yes.
So that would be, we would spend an additional $6 million.
Correct. So,
Right.
so for example, if you combined that line item, vacancies held with operating labor, if you combine both those numbers, it would look like our labor budget is actually increasing. So that's why
Right.
we split it. So you can actually see we have the staff positions, which includes some vacancies that we know that we need to fill. But then we have this other bucket where you saw that it was 2 million, which is our typical, we hold some vacancies.
Right.
And then we're adding all those accelerated separation program participants into this bucket. And then as the need arises, we can always draw from this and put it into the operating. But this gives you an idea that we're trying to save an additional $4 million.
My second is really a concern. Taking a 5% reduction in operating labor in a well-run utility by every metric we've ever looked at does not say we're overstaffed. Which my concern is then therefore, what is the risk that we are running as a result of this reduction in operating labor? And how do we as the board know that this is a good risk over time? In other words, we don't want to lose being a quality utility. We don't want to lose our ability to do the right kind of maintenance, the right kind of corrective maintenance in fixing customers. So what kind of metrics can we as a board look at over time to make sure that this is a good risk and not one that is just driven by other reasons?
So first of all, let me say that part of the program, that accelerated separation program that the city put out, was that we would keep the positions vacant for 1 year. And so this is a necessary thing that we have to do. We really don't have much choice in this. Now, what we said with this program is we're going to prioritize backfilling those positions based on the criticality to the organization. So right now we have apprenticeships, operators in training, and those types of positions that we absolutely need because those are core functions of what we do. So those kind of rose to the top. Back of those would be management positions, supervisory positions that we've had to kind of juggle a little bit. And so this side of the table and the folks behind you have been doing a little bit more because of the vacancies that we've held. So we will start to implement hiring of those positions over the course of the next year and a half or so.
I understand why the city council made this mandate. On the other hand, I think we need to have the ability to tell the city council that this mandate could be injurious to the service of this public utility, if in fact that's true.
And that's my job to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, if you start to see significant reductions in production, maintenance, response times, things like that, then that's on us. And so we are looking at all of those things. We do have contracts in place for things like response, repair. We obviously try to prioritize our internal staffing first as necessary. So will it be a challenge? Yes, it will be. I'll be quite honest with you, it will be. It's not going to be easy. But all of us took this program, understood what it meant, and are prioritizing how do we start to fill those positions again correctly. Because the other thing we don't want to do is hire just because there's a vacancy there and get the wrong person in the spot. That's why we're prioritizing the apprenticeships, so we can actually get people who can grow with the utility and be a long-term investment.
Right. So you will communicate to the board if you see some level of jeopardy
Yes,
as a result of this, because we're all from districts, so we all have communication with our city council person.
you bet.
And I would just say, utilize us if needed.
Absolutely. I
Thank you.
appreciate that concern.
Thank you.
You bet.
So for the electric utility, our total budget is increasing by 2.5%. We deferred a lot of electric capital projects during this time last year, and we felt it was important to resume those capital investments. Again, this budget is balanced with revenue excluding bonds exceeding operating expenses. Any questions on this slide?
So I think we'll stop you if there's questions, so you can
Okay.
just kind of continue on.
For the water utility, we also have a balanced budget. I do want to point out that our capital investments appear low in this table, and that's because our groundwater treatment project went to council last night with a budget of 67 million. Water's amended budget next year will be the 19 million that's proposed here, plus the 67 million for the groundwater treatment project. If there aren't any further questions, I'll turn it over to Crystal Perea. Crystal is our senior budget analyst, and she'll run through some of the programs and projects that we have slated for next fiscal year.
Great. Any further questions from any of the commission? Nope. Go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the board. The utility industry faces continual challenges, including extreme weather events, as well as changes in legislation that impact both the electric and water systems. In the last year alone, we've seen examples of why we need to remain vigilant and prepared for such events. There were the summer heat waves, which resulted in outages. In California, we always have the threat of wildfires. And in Texas, we saw the effect that the cold snap had there on their services. And of course, we've had the emergence of more stringent PFAS legislation. We have a wildfire mitigation plan, as well as numerous water and electric inspection and maintenance programs in place to ensure operational reliability and resiliency, and will continue to examine potential risks and make investments that will mitigate their impact on our system and on our customers. Next slide. We have accelerated the transformer replacement program, which will replace up to 2,000 aged transformers over the next 5 years, with 400 planned for the upcoming fiscal year. These replacements will improve system reliability, improve load handling capabilities, and minimize outages. And in the upcoming year, we plan to start construction on undergrounding 0.7 circuit miles on Sycamore, which will increase electric system reliability and improve roadway visibility. Renewable energy is comprising a greater percentage of our portfolio, so it's essential that we consider how to serve our customers reliably when some of these sources operate intermittently. In the upcoming fiscal year, we will explore energy storage technologies such as batteries that will allow us to meet demand during peak hours when load is at its greatest, and when resources such as solar or wind generation are unavailable to us or more costly. The initial phase of the advanced groundwater treatment facilities is also currently underway, with construction planned to begin next fiscal year. Facilities will be constructed at the Linda Vista, La Palma, Energy Field, and Boysen Park wells to treat PFAS present in the groundwater basin. This investment is necessary to restore local groundwater as Anaheim's primary water supply source. And replacing aged infrastructure is also essential to providing our customers with reliable water service. In the upcoming fiscal year, we plan to replace 20,000 feet of water mains across Anaheim, including 3,600 feet on State College Boulevard and 1,600 feet on Indiana Street. Our role is not only to provide electric and water infrastructure, but to also provide design support and efficiency rebates to help developers meet building codes. With many exciting new development projects planned in Anaheim in the coming years, we want to be prepared to offer them our support. We offer new construction rebates for potential development projects, which can qualify for up to $50,000 to help them offset installation and upgrade costs. And our energy efficiency staff also work closely with architects, builders, and design teams to provide design review services, finding the most cost-effective and energy-efficient options for new and existing buildings. We also have several sustainability initiatives in progress, including the development of a voluntary rate for customers who have expressed interest in accelerating their investments in green power. This program will enable customers to choose what portion of their energy is served with renewable energy resources and is planned for City Council early next calendar year. We also plan to work with local schools to place gardens at campuses and host tours of our facilities. La Palma Complex, for example, will include a demonstration garden as groundwater treatment is being installed, which the community will be able to utilize. Additionally, as state mandates are accelerating the adoption of electric vehicles, our focus is on educating customers and tapping into state funding to help provide them with rebates. And the pandemic required us to adapt and shift the way that we provide services and assistance for our customers. We have made more services available to our customers, including online appointment scheduling and online development assistance. We also have the online rebate processing tool, which is scheduled to launch at the start of the upcoming fiscal year, and it will track customer participation, conservation data, program expenditures, and will improve analysis of the program performance. It will also make it easier for residents and businesses to apply for rebates and review their status. We are also looking forward to safely getting back to hosting customer outreach events. This includes attending safety walks with the Anaheim Police Department and neighborhood services to identify street light and property lighting improvements. The Sustainable Schools Award will be relaunched in January 2022. This year's award was deferred due to the pandemic, but we're looking forward to recognizing more Anaheim schools that have made strides in environmental stewardship at their campus and in their curriculum. And as you saw in our current year accomplishments video, we did host 3 Cal State Fullerton interns this past summer. Because of the pandemic, the structure for most of them was virtual, and it's our goal to be able to provide the incoming summer interns with a safe and memorable experience working in the office and interacting with staff on site. And our annual high school scholarship award will be entering its 4th year. The $5,000 scholarship is open to Anaheim high school seniors interested in pursuing a college education in a STEM-related field. And finally, we are exploring ideas for other events that had to shift to virtual platforms this past year, such as our annual Public Power Week and Water Awareness. This means finding new ways that we can educate local students and families while prioritizing their safety. That concludes this evening's budget presentation. At this time, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions of any of the board members? I guess we have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you'll have an opportunity to dive in deeper, or if you would like to sit down with staff, Brian and Andrew and his team will be available throughout the course of the month. So we can do a phone call, virtual. If you want to come in, we could do that as well, depending on your level of interest in the budget.
And just a reminder, next month when we ask for approval or recommendation of the budget, we will again revisit some of these numbers. And if there are any questions, we can go over them again before the vote next month.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, we are being asked to approve and authorize the posting of our 2021 water quality report. Susan?
Dennis?
Thank you. This afternoon, John Sanks, our Environmental Services and Safety Manager, will provide a presentation on Anaheim's annual water quality report. After the presentation, we will request your approval to post a report on the website and to provide the State Water Resource Control Board certification of the posting. John?
All right, thank you. As you said, my name is John Sanks, and I'm going to talk to you about our water quality report. And in technical terms, this is called a consumer confidence report, which isn't the most friendly of phrases. So really, we call it to our customers the water quality report. And what this report does is it demonstrates that we've met our water quality standards in this last year.
And it summarizes the testing results that we took throughout 2020 that ensures that we're in compliance with all the regulations that govern the utility. So preparing this report is a requirement of the State Water Board and the EPA. And we want to make sure that this report is available to all of our customers, so everybody knows what's in the water that they're consuming every day. So we do this in a few ways. We make a posting in our bills, a little statement that this report is now available. We post flyers at public places such as libraries. We send an email blast to all of our customers who have an email address on file in customer service. And of course, we post it on our website. And the take home of this report is that we met all of our standards for 2020. So we get there by following the laws and regulations that govern a public utility such as ours. And those are all contained within about 700 plus pages of rules that we have to follow. And these rules go into everything that goes into operating a system, how we build the system, how we operate it, how we sample, how we test, and how we report this information to the public and to the State Water Resources Control Board, which is our governing regulatory body. So what's critical to maintaining our water quality for our customers is making sure that we have a safe water supply. So a few things that we do are conducting sanitary surveys of our water infrastructure. This last year, we conducted a sanitary survey of the Walnut Canyon Reservoir. We need to do that every 5 years. And that's when we take a close look at what's around it, what's been built up since it was constructed. Are there any potential contaminant sources that could affect that water supply? And I'm happy to say that just based on its location, there's not a lot out there that would be a contaminant source, so it can continue to give us safe and reliable water. We also look closely at what's going on in terms of others drilling within our jurisdiction. The Anaheim Municipal Code requires that anybody setting a well within the city of Anaheim pulls a permit from the Utilities Department, and that allows us to evaluate the project, make sure that whatever they're doing is going to comply with the state water well standards, that it's going to have adequate seals and setbacks, that somebody isn't going to inadvertently create a situation that could contaminate an aquifer. And then, of course, when we're installing our city wells, we want to make sure we site them appropriately. And one thing we do is make sure that we set them at an appropriate depth such that we wouldn't be bringing in any industrial contaminants or anything at the surface that could pose us a problem down the road. And what's really important to this is making sure that we're communicating closely with our water suppliers, either MWD or the Orange County Water District, to make sure we understand what is in our source water. We get frequent updates from them, their water quality tests, and we go to meetings and such, just to talk about what are the water quality issues within the region that we need to be aware of in Anaheim. And then finally, the State Water Board conducts inspections of our facilities. Generally, they do this on an annual basis, and that's when they take a tour and look at all of our various infrastructure, the wells and the pump stations and so on, and make sure that those facilities are meeting the regulatory standards. So when we know we have a safe water supply, we need to do a verification to make sure that that safe water is making its way into our system. And we do this through testing. And so each week, our water quality staff visits 51 locations that you can see with those green dots throughout the city to take distribution samples. And this is some of the more important sampling that we do. And what they're doing is they're looking to make sure that the water is properly chlorinated, that it's disinfected. They run a bacteria sample to make sure that there's nothing in there that's not supposed to be getting out to our customers. And we conduct additional samples as we need to, quarterly tests on our wells and looking at our treatment plant. But then we also take it a step further and do some as-needed testing when we're requested. For example, if anybody comes to us and asks for a lead test, we will go to their home or go to the school and take some lead testing samples for them if they're concerned. That has not been an issue in Anaheim, but we're happy to accommodate that. We'll also go to customer sites if there's any sort of a water quality question that comes up, and maybe they're worried about the water hardness or odor or anything that may come up. And our water quality staff will go out there and take a look and make sure we understand what's going on. And then we'll also run testing on any sort of new construction that we do. If you're dropping in a new water main, we want to make sure that's properly disinfected before we put it into the system. So we'll run testing on that as well to confirm that, again, we're not bringing anything into the system when we're doing work on it. And the two places that we do these the lab testing is we have an on-site laboratory at the Linane Water Treatment Plant, and that's really essential to us to respond quickly during outages and to bring equipment back into service. We can use that to test for bacteria as we're bringing new equipment on, or after we've done some maintenance work where we had to go into the system and work on it. But we can't test everything internally. There's just too many chemicals at this point and too many specialty methods. So we also use outside laboratories that can test hundreds of various industrial contaminants. And What's unique about them is they can see, just, super small levels of chemicals. For instance, PFAS and PFOA, those are regulated down to the part per trillion threshold. And we're talking about levels that are kind of on the equivalent of a drop within a swimming pool, but they're still able to detect that and they're able to quantify it and let us know what's going on. And then there's some broad classes of categories of water quality situations that we want to be mindful of. One of these is stagnant water. We don't want to have water accumulating in any one single part of the system. So our operators take a lot of care to make sure that we're flushing out the tank, we're cycling the tanks. So essentially they draw the level down, we mix it up. So it's not just sitting in a tank longer than it needs to. And then other parts of the system they visit from time to time to do flushing on them. That's as simple as opening up a fire hydrant, flushing water out of systems where there may not be a lot of demand on a daily basis. We're also mindful of any commercial and industrial properties that may be around our facilities and through the city. So we make sure that anybody who has a commercial property has a backflow equipment that's installed and that it's being inspected and operated appropriately. That makes sure if there was to be a system outage of some sort, we wouldn't pull anybody else's water from their premises into our system. And of course, we operate our water treatment facilities to make sure that anything that was in the water gets filtered out. For the Linane Water Treatment Plant and our disinfection facilities at our water wells. And as you know, we're going to be constructing the PFAS treatment systems at a number of facilities in the not too distant future. And then finally, our last category would be sewer and stormwater conveyance. So if we're installing a water pipe, it's really as simple as making sure that we're not co-locating a sewer line immediately next to a water main. We would never put that kind of a situation in a common trench. We're going to make sure there's offsets in place and that there's protection there to make sure that they don't get in contact with each other, and that on our sites, any storm water is conveyed away from our water wells and pumps and so on. So the results of these programs has really been to make result in water that exceeds our state and federal requirements for drinking water. And these measures, I think, have been very effective to making sure that, again, we're a safe and reliable source for the public. And if you have any questions about the presentation or the water quality report, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing no question, I have one curiosity question. Do we actually have any customer-owned water wells in our city?
Yes. Now, most of the wells that are installed would be monitoring wells used for, site remediation and cleanup. Think if the gas station, was doing work, they may have some, shallow monitoring wells just to test the tanks and things. But there are a handful of either agriculture wells or old domestic wells that do exist in the city. They're kind of few and far between right now. I think it's a real hassle for a customer to own and operate one compared to tying into the municipal grid at this point.
Do they have a responsibility to make sure that their water is tested and so on from a state standpoint?
It sort of depends. So if it's just one resident who wants to have their own water well, there's not necessarily a lot that would go into them operating it. It would be prudent for them to test it and stay on top of it.
Yes.
If they're serving anybody, if they were to, run it out to their apartment building and things like that, they could be considered a small water system. And then they would have some oversight by the Orange County Healthcare Agency.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
New knowledge. All right, any other questions from the board members? Okay,
I have a quick question. Just,
Norma?
is this the report that's posted then?
Yes,
Yes?
yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be in a PDF format, and then it'll be on our website. And then Janice, can you talk about how customers are notified?
We do send it out along, if we're billing electronically, we send it out with their bill. We include it in a billing insert that we let them know that that this report is available. And then if they want us to send it to them, we can do that as well. So we have it available in many different formats. We just really want to get it into their hands.
And then I think we're putting it on the actual bill itself.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so there's a little
Yeah. Statement on the bill.
on the bill and we'll have a note there saying that the water quality report is now posted, and then they can go to the website and look it up.
And I see you have it in several languages.
Yes, yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe?
Are the water standards for drinking is different than for agricultural usage?
Yes,
Have a different standard?
yes. Drinking water is very stringent, especially in the state of California. Yeah, so they're very high standards, yes.
That means most of our water is just for drinking water, right? Not
Yes.
for other usage.
So we have a potable water system. We also have some recycled water right next to City Hall that we use only for irrigation and some toilet flushing in this building. So that's a little bit different, but any type of potable water that we serve has much more rigor than any of the recycled water.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second to approve the item.
I second.
Second by AB. Like Peggy, you need to do a roll call vote.
I apologize. That was Board Member Campos Kurtz that made the motion. This is a roll call vote for item number 4. Board Member Abdul-Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Baroldi,
Aye.
Board Member Bala, Board Member Bala,
Aye.
Board Member Gaona,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz,
Aye.
Vice Chair Seymour.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. Our next item is a presentation of our 2021
This
wildfire
conference will now be recorded.
mitigation plan update.
Okay, Janet?
Ooh, I'm being recorded. Thank you, Duku. Good evening, board members. You'll find in your packet the updated 2021 wildfire mitigation plan. There is no action required by the board this evening. This is for information only. If you remember, the board did approve the first edition of the wildfire mitigation plan that was developed by APU in coordination with Anaheim Fire and Rescue in 2020. The board approved, council recommended the plan, and then it was submitted to the state's Wildfire Safety Advisory Board, who deemed that plan comprehensive. The role of the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board has been very fluid since it's in their first year that they have been together. And they've made some recommendations for plans. And fortunately, a lot of those recommendations were already currently in our plan. But it's also a way to help navigate through the 50 public utility wildfire mitigation plans that they have to go through. So we've incorporated those. Here tonight, I have Fred Barbars, who is our transmission and distribution engineering manager, who also leads our fire mitigation plan and efforts. And he will be presenting those recommendations and overall the updates and highlights of the 2021 plan. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Janet. Good evening, Vice Chair and board members. California has seen an increase in some of the most devastating wildfires caused by utility-involved equipment. In response to these wildfires, the state of California requires every electric utility to prepare a wildfire mitigation plan and update it annually. This 2021 plan is an update of our 2020 plan presented to the PUB last April and includes progress made on wildfire mitigation measures and incorporates new regulatory guidelines. Our 2021 plan was developed in consultation with the Anaheim Fire and Rescue and includes preventive strategies and infrastructure upgrades to limit the potential for wildfires and the actions to take during extreme weather conditions for risk mitigation in the high fire threat zones. It is important to note that approximately 98% of city-owned power lines in fire threat zones are currently underground, which significantly reduces the overall risk to the community. Preparation of the wildfire mitigation plan was mandated under Senate Bill 901 in September 2018. The bill requires each utility to construct, maintain, and operate their electrical lines and equipment in a manner that will minimize the risk of wildfire posed by those electrical lines and equipment. Assembly Bill 1054, enacted in July 2019, requires annual plan submittals to the newly established California Wildfire Safety Advisory Board for review and advisory opinion on or before each July 1st. To ensure consistency in wildfire plan preparations, the Wildfire Board approves a set of guidelines for the publicly owned electric utilities last December. Our 2020 plan included another requirement under Senate Bill 901 that every 3 years, the plan must include review by a qualified independent evaluator to assess the safe operation of electrical infrastructure and to review and assess the comprehensive of its wildfire mitigation plan. Following Public Utility Board's recommendation and City Council's approval last May, we forwarded our 2020 plan to the Wildfire Board, who highlighted ours as a comprehensive plan. The Wildfire Safety Advisory Board's role includes recommendation on streamlining plans, on streamlining plan preparations by the California Electric Utilities, proper operation and maintenance of electrical facilities in wildfire areas, and implementation of other measures to reduce risk of wildfires caused by electrical facilities. To that end, the Wildfire Board approved a set of advisory guidelines in December 2020 that our 2021 plan has incorporated. We use metrics to track progress in our wildfire mitigation measures. Some of these refer to environmental factors that can escalate potential for wildfires, such as red flag warnings and the Santa Ana Wildfire Threat Index. Other metrics, such as the number of public safety power shutoff and wildfire attributed to electrical facilities, track electric systems hardening and resiliency. Undergrounding is one component of our electric system hardening and fire mitigation, while our 8 wildfire cameras overlooking Anaheim's areas prone to wildfires provide valuable situational awareness to utilities department, Anaheim Fire and Rescue, and other stakeholders. The overhead lines providing electric service to the Eucalyptus neighborhood next to Deer Canyon are in high fire threat zone, and therefore we have an undergrounding project in progress there that's slated for completion by this summer. Project construction there is a major challenge as excavations and traffic control in the narrow roadway, which is the only way in or out of that area, requires close coordination with the residents and emergency services. The steep slopes prone to displacement require retaining walls and other construction techniques to avoid equipment damage and trapping workers.
This is a small project, but the road is extremely narrow, and even getting construction vehicles up there to do the digging and trenching is a challenge. So, so a small project, but a big impact after it's going to be all done.
Right.
Also, substantial tree roots in the way require close monitoring to avoid weakening the trees that could subsequently uproot during high winds. 2 wildfires last October in eastern Orange County scorched over 28,000 acres with wind speeds of up to 80 miles per hour, which affected 100,000 people with evacuation orders. We were using our wildfire cameras to closely track these wildfires, as the shift in the wind could have redirected them into Anaheim. In short, our wildfire mitigation plan is part of our overarching goal to protect our customers by preventing wildfires caused by electrical equipment, and the cameras give firefighters better awareness and more time to respond. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Thank you.
Any questions? I see no questions. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, which is approval of the First Amendment to the agreement between Orange County Sanitation District in the city of Anaheim.
Okay, so for those of you who have been on State College recently, you know that this is a long term project and fortunately, major project. And fortunately, our portion of it has come to an end. So Michael's going to talk a little bit about this.
Sure. Thank you. And this item here was a first an agreement that we did with Orange County Sanitation District a couple of years ago. It was a collaboratively let them do some of the water line capital improvements that we were already planning to do, but since they were trenching all the way up and down State College, we wanted to let them do that. And so we set aside a budget, an agreement with them with what we thought was a budget to do the design and the construction of the pipelines at various intersections along State College. As they finished the design, they bid it out, and then they recently just completed the construction. Construction costs came in higher than what we originally gave them an allowance or budget for by $515,000. And so this here is a recommendation to approve our first amendment and the only amendment. This project would be closed out to the Orange County Sanitation District, and that allows them. They have a contract with the construction contractor and the design engineer to do this, and that would close this project out.
Any questions by any member of the board? I see no questions. Thank you, Michael. I believe that we need a motion and a second on this item and a roll call vote.
Move the motion.
I have a motion by AB and a second by Vincent. Peggy, roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote for item number 6. Board Member Abdul-Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Baroldi,
Aye.
Board Member Bala,
Aye.
Board Member Guyona,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz,
Aye.
Vice Chair Seymour.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. We now have a presentation on distributed generation and electrical vehicle growth and impact.
Okay.
Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Vice Chair. As you're well aware, our industry is changing pretty rapidly, both with the continued proliferation of distributed generation or mainly solar energy, and with the deployment of electric vehicles, hopefully to soak up some of that distributed generation. And to kind of give you a picture and a snapshot of what's going on in Anaheim and how it's impacting us, Sean Smith, our Integrated Resources Manager, will give the presentation.
Great.
Good evening, Vice Chair Seymour and the board. I believe this request came from Vice Chair Seymour, so this is a special request. And we're going to go through all these impacts and the growth in these two areas. Also, it should be known that APU's goal through this is to be balanced with our position, and we are strategically managing the impacts that will come about in the next decade. Over the next decade, you'll see tremendous change coming through 2030. We're going to start with solar here. Now, solar, the legislative and regulatory framework in California really forced and drove adoption. What we're talking about here is all these mandates that started way back in 2006 with Senate Bill 1, the million solar roof. We also have the renewable portfolio standard and then net energy metering. Finally, right now, we even have homes. When you build a new home and tracks, you're going to have to put solar on it, basically. It can be zero emissions, but the only way to really get there is solar. What you see with that too is it's really driven prices down. In addition to that, what's happened is manufacturing has increased tremendously around the globe. You'll see places like China, and which further just drive down the pricing. Finally, this is a zero emission source, and so there's no fuel. Once I put up my panels, the sun's out, energy is being produced. If I go to the next, you'll see some of these costs over the last decade and then projected out into the future. Now,
we put 35, we had to put $35 million towards helping fund SB1. And to date, we've got 37 megawatts of customer solar. And that's expected to almost double by 2030.
How many customers is that as a percentage of our market?
So that's 185 CNI customers and about 3,900 residential customers, which represents about 1% of commercial and 4% of our residential customer base.
So we have a long ways to go.
Potentially, yes, but we've got some strategies to benefit from this too. Now, what's happened both on the commercial side, in the wholesale market and in the residential market, you'll see that the solar is produced all in the middle of the day. I think we've gone through this a few times. And what happens is then as it goes down, people come home and turn on their air conditioning and they still need that power. And it's driven prices up in the wholesale market. And also units like our Canyon plant has to come on right here and ramp up as all those solar facilities are starting to decrease in power.
So
Now,
Sean, real quick, so one of our strategies right now that we're actually starting to study and will probably come before the board, I would imagine next fiscal year, is realigning our time of use periods. Right now, our time of use periods are in the outdated noon to 5 period of time where it should have been a decade or 2 decades ago. But instead of, we should be shifting to later in the afternoon to encourage people to either charge their cars or use their appliances earlier in the day in the mid-afternoon when they were told, in the 80s and 90s not to. So it's an education campaign, but shifting our time of use rates to more reflect the pricing that we're seeing in the market.
and we've also got, a $2,500 battery storage rebate. And so if someone, and most people nowadays, if they're putting in storage, it's solar plus storage. They're not just putting a battery in. And that would also, with TOU rates, that will shift. They'll be incentivized to shift it right to where we need it.
What is the cost today of putting solar on a residence, just as an example, a typical residence?
It varies quite a bit, and it's in the tens of thousands, depending on the size, your load. They'll look at how much load you.
20,000, 25,000.
Exactly.
Typically, unless there's significant electrical work, like sometimes you have a 100-amp panel, for example, that you need to upgrade in order to be able to take on, put in the breakers and everything. So now you're talking about significant electrical work in addition to the solar.
Another couple thousand. Correct. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Keep going.
Now, along with the storage, you've seen it in the starting to just barely get into the solar world. You've seen a lot of headlines lately on EVs. I mean, all the major manufacturers, GM's going all the way to the point where 2035, we're going full electric. Even Ford in Europe saying by 2030, they're going full electric. It is, if you've driven around town, you'll see chargers everywhere, Tesla chargers, and it's really burgeoning. In addition, the mandates are now coming down the pike within California. So California is the hotbed, and we've seen the executive order by, they want 250,000 chargers within the state. And then also by 2035, they want all passenger and light duty vehicles being sold being EVs. And additionally, by 2045, any vehicle basically. So that's the goals. What's helped out in that process is just like solar, lithium ion is the major battery chemistry. And so what we've seen over the last 10 years also, dramatic price drops. We're talking on the order, magnitude of 90% price drops. And as we approach this $100 a kilowatt down here in like 23, 24, we're gonna get cost parity with gasoline engines. So you can imagine a car, all you gotta do is change the tires. You don't have to do pretty much anything else. You get 1 million miles on it, and it costs the same as a gas engine, and probably will charge in a half hour to an hour. Now, right now, if you look at solar plus storage, we're very limited throughout the city. They're just a scant few units, but we figure by 2030, up to half the system sold. It could be even higher. We don't, have great intelligence on that. We'll have batteries associated with them. Finally, EV penetration. Right now, we have about 5,000 vehicles in the city, and we expect that to go up to close to 30 by 2030.
5,000 out of,
300,000? Yeah, it's small right now.
yeah, it's a very small number.
It's
That's
a
what I
small
thought.
percentage, correct?
Very small.
Yes.
Can I ask one more question on
You can ask
residential
me.
solar? What is the typical payback period for a customer if they spend $25,000 to put solar energy on the top of their house? How long will it take them to get payback relative to reduced electrical rates?
So this gets,
There's a lot
there's a lot that goes into that question. And there's, the
Depends
reason
on-
why is we used to have something called net energy metering 1, which means you get full retail. So people would oversize their system, sell it into the grid.
Right.
We would have to buy it at full retail.
Right.
So 15, 17, whatever cents we'd have to pay for that. So that makes your payback much, much quicker.
Right.
Now we've gone to net energy metering 2.0.
Right.
And that means that any excess energy is going to be more comparable at the wholesale rate.
Right.
So that reduces the payback quite a bit. So I'm not sure if you know, like the actual.
Payback period.
Yeah.
My own
There-
point
and what-
is, I think it's a hard sell
Yeah.
to get to these kinds of numbers. And to me, it sounds very optimistic. Now, you may be right, but just giving you one man's opinion.
I think the key is the battery storage technology. Because I mean, if you can't store it, it's not worth it if you're not at home.
No.
Hey, maybe for you, I mean, if you're at home, retired, but I mean, that's a very small,
Right.
group of people.
Right.
Because if you can store it, you can use it to charge your car or whatever, but
Yeah.
once again, I agree with you and your sentiment. It's gonna be a hard sell until that happens.
One of the things that we're starting to see more is in those areas that are more wildfire prone, these battery systems are going now. So they haven't really hit the
Yes.
general market yet. But if you're somebody who's subject to 2, 3, 4, 5 days where you're not going to have power before PG&E or Edison has the inspection and everything else to return, then this makes a lot of sense. And so they're taking advantage of all the rebates that are available in those other service territories. So that's going to be the initial market adoption, and then it'll start to translate into our areas down the road.
Our reliability, it's going to still be a hard sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that hampers penetration in Anaheim is our rate structure is so much different than IOUs, right? Because their top tier rate's about 35 cents per kilowatt hour. Our top tier rate's about 20 cents. We only have 2 tiers. They have 3 tiers, right? And so the payback is that much longer for customers in Anaheim. So then it hardly pencils out, at least from a purchase standpoint. A lot of customers then do a PPA or a lease because then it lessens the upfront costs and then maybe pencils out a little bit more in real time.
Right. So the leasing arrangements, they're not basing it on payback within 5, 10, whatever years. What they're doing is they're saying, we're going to enter into a 30-year agreement with you. And now that's going to be our recovery. We're going to assume that there's going to be X% increase in your utility rates, and that differential is going to be how we sell you the system. So that's a very common approach that a marketer will use. And so our goal is obviously to make sure that our rates only recover our costs. And that's what we have been doing for 100 years now. So it's going to be interesting how this goes. It's not that solar is going to be ubiquitous everywhere, but certainly the state is saying if it's new, it's going to have solar on it. That's for certain.
Right.
Did I hear you correctly? You said 1% of commercial clients have solar, 4% of residential. Is that accurate? Wouldn't it make more sense for commercial users when they're using it during the day to have solar over residential?
Yes.
How do we target them?
Yeah, so it's interesting with commercial, not everybody owns their property. So it wouldn't be the business who's occupying it, it might be the property manager, owner. And so the ones who are the early adopters are the ones who have already implemented something on their rooftop. So you could just do a Google search and you can see who's kind of got it out there. Some businesses can't because, what we found is long-term, there's maintenance issues. For example, we put in solar on the Hall D of the convention center back in the late 90s. And the technology changed so dramatically that, and they had to re-roof Hall D. And so we ended up just taking the entire solar panel off after about 20 years. So it's an expense at that point. Now we put on new panels on the other halls, and so technology improves, but it's not for everybody, I guess is what I would say. You have to really look at long-term. Are you going to be there for 30 years in order to make this work for you?
Continue.
So unlike solar, EVs are actually load for us. So we are actually investing in infrastructure as well as companies like Tesla, other bigger companies around town. So currently there are over 440 chargers around the city, of which 53 are what's called direct current fast chargers. So they'll charge your car. Some of the fastest ones like Teslas have 250 kilowatts per hour, so they can charge a car in half hour if its system is right, if they've got the throughput. We offer incentives for our fleets and commercial and residential customers. So we'll help them install chargers and give them, we have time of use rates for charging so they can charge at night when the load is low and the prices are lower too. But the key takeaways are policies and manufacturing are really accelerating both solar and EV adoption. I mean, you'll see this both in residential and commercial, but also in the wholesale market. I mean, solar plus storage is literally everywhere, and same with wind.
Hey, Sean, can you talk a little bit about that in terms of new power supply projects that are proposed? What percentage is solar or solar plus storage versus other types of renewable projects?
Oh, it's at least 80-ish%. I mean, pretty much everything in California we're seeing right now when we go, look for projects, a little bit of wind, and it's just all solar plus storage. The pricing's right. Now that you've attached solar to it, you can get over that afternoon peak. You can move those hours out. They also have an investment tax credit. So as long as they're using solar to charge more than 75% of the battery, they get the full investment tax credit. So the market is completely changed where it's just almost everything, basically. Also, we thought a while back that everyone's going to put solar on and not, what's going to happen to the grid, but the grid's become very important, especially now with this solar plus storage resource. There's opportunities in the future to help have demand response programs and the like that can combine these units around town and help us with the afternoon peak. So as time progresses and we develop our strategies and it's built out more, there'll be opportunities both with the grid, with vehicle to grid, and also solar. And so we looked at this earlier, and you'll see, we had our solar. We talked about that earlier, but now we're adding on top the EVs. Okay, so if you actually charge EVs at the right time, you can now and even dispatch eventually. Right? Because you look at what is an EV but a battery. So eventually you're going to have vehicle to grid, and you can just charge in these orange areas and then help us out in the evening with like a demand response program. Right? So that's the future. There's only about 2 vehicle to grid chargers on the market for the residentials. They have a lot more for fleets right now, but that will come. Years will go by and you'll say, whatever happened to that? And suddenly you'll wake up one day and there'll be thousands of homes on the vehicle to grid system.
So one interesting thing is it's not just the personal use EVs that could help with this. You think about a school bus. Pick up the kids in the morning, take them back in the afternoons. In the middle of the day, they could be charging. And then in the early mornings, they could be charging. 5 o'clock, perhaps, they could be discharging. right? Where the utility could use it, and perhaps there'd be financial compensation, which is what a demand response program is you pay because you're getting benefit from whether it's an air conditioner or an electric vehicle, it's serving the same purpose. So right now, we have a demand response program today where we have 400 households who have signed up, that when we send them a blast and say, hey, it's gonna be a hot day, they'll turn their thermostat up 3, 4, 5 degrees, whatever it is, their choice. And then whatever the metering tells us, we can give them a compensation, $1 per kilowatt hour. That same concept could be applied to EVs, and we actually already allow EVs onto that program. So we think that there's going to be some synergies because there's such convergence between market factors and legislative factors that are both driving EV and PV solar to the point where we have to have smart ways to utilize it. And that's what I think this concept is demonstrating.
Interesting.
Yes, and adding to the school bus concept, we got most of this, you could have the summer and have use of those batteries, in the summer when we need it the most, so. But that's my last slide. We've had a number of questions. Are there
Any
further?
further questions by any of the board members? Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask Sean to stay up there for just 1 second. Sean has been with us for 2.5 years, and I regret to have to inform you that he will be leaving us here shortly. Sean came from Edison. He's been just a wealth of knowledge in terms of power supply, been a great manager for our group, and we're going to sorely miss him. He got a job offer at
Chelan Public Utility District up on the Columbia River,
which is in Washington.
He's lucky.
Yeah, so he'll be leaving next month, right? Which is a couple days.
May 12th.
Okay, so a couple of weeks he'll be leaving us, and so we do want to recognize him. We have a plaque to just honor his time that he's been here. And if you wouldn't mind, we'd like to take a picture with the board and Sean.
Thank you.
All right, why don't you stand a little?
Okay.
And then maybe we'll take our picture.
Socially distant. Socially distant picture. You should zoom out.
That looks like pretty old. Need a wide angle lens now.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Forward smile.
See the eyes.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Congratulations, Sean.
I know, yeah. Yes, I live about 2 minutes from salmon fishing. Or I will be.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the quarterly status report on capital improvement projects, master agreements, general services, etc.
Okay, so let's start with the CIP, and is Michael or Janet, one of you going to talk about the CIP?
Okay. So if you go to the second one, it says Water Capital Improvement Program. And I just wanted to update you that the first box in the upper left shows you what our amended budget is. And as Andrew mentioned, the amended budget is what we adopted plus what we carried over the year. And so about 3/4 of the way to the budget, we're a target to spend. We spent 76% of that budget. Looking down below, you can see the projects that we're currently working on in our capital improvement project, which is 41 projects. We have several in design. A lot of second pipeline projects are in the design. We have 5 that are in construction, one of which is a pressure regulator station that on Lincoln and Sunkist that we're working on right now. And 7 were completed, such as the Olive Street pipeline that is just north, on Olive Street, just north of La Palma. We put a new pipeline in underneath the railroad tracks. And some of those are reflected on that back page as a summary of some of those projects that we are working on and ones that are completed, such as the Holland Street project. Any questions on the water capital?
Any questions?
And as for electric capital, as you can see, our amended budget at 86 million, we are about 62% into that budget, which seems on track for it being in April. Looking at our capital units, we're doing very well progress-wise in our major capital projects, which is the T&D, the underground conversion, the field capital and substation projects. Let me just expand a little on the substation projects. Those are large projects, multi-year. So the percentage there seems a bit low, but we will be completing some of that work over a multi-year period. The direct buried cable, 37% through. We are awaiting invoices. So we feature on the back here one of our direct buried cable replacement projects on Andover. That was a critical project for us to get to. We had a number of outages occurring on Andover, and we completed the direct buried cable replacement on that street and are awaiting invoices.
Still
for
in
that.
progress.
Yes, and so we'll make it by the end of the year.
Right.
As far as expenditures go, but it reflects a little bit low there. As you can see, we have a number of projects in construction as well right now, 24 projects in construction, and we estimate those to be completed, a majority to be completed at the of this fiscal year. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I guess my question here, you have it per district. Each district has a different color.
Yes.
The thickness sometimes varies in district to another district.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So, board member AB, let me look at take the substation projects, for example. So substations we have 13 substations, 14 substations throughout, and we're doing right now a substation project that is on, I would say, central Anaheim area. And so, of course, a lot of the work going on, capital projects wise and expenditure is occurring for that particular substation located in that district. So it skews a little bit that, a heavy work is being done in that area. As for transmission and distribution, we have a lot of work happening overhead, pole replacements, overhead work happening in our District 2 and also in District 4. So it varies year by year. Right now, we're doing a lot of overhead work, reconductoring, pole replacement work. And so it's reflecting that in our capital allocations.
So one other thing I would just add is if you look at the street light item, you can see that the bars are pretty much even. And that shows that there's basically projects evenly throughout the city. And that's what our street lighting program is. We're trying to go all throughout the city to upgrade them. So it's not always the case where you have equal numbers of projects across the entire city. And that's what Janet was reflecting.
Okay, this is kind of activities, more activity in this district.
Yes, yes.
So often, but just not because of the distribution between the districts.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, and it really depends that, like she was saying, she only has certain numbers of substations and they're where they are, right?
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
In terms of the quarterly status reports, I wanted to take a few minutes and explain a few things to you. So in the staff report, page 2 shows you our master agreements. And highlight a couple of things. One is you see on the water side, you see the number of projects and the expenditures dropping. And so the initial reaction may be, well, are we doing less in water? And the answer is no. If you look on the third page, you actually see a table that shows 2 new projects for water. And this is the new methodology that Michael brought before you a number of months ago, which is design build. And so instead of doing small projects here and there, what he's done is he's done longer stretches of project. One's on Imperial Highway, one's on Indiana Street here, where we've had multiple issues. And doing the little piecemeal projects would have been very, very cumbersome and time, it would just take longer. So the dollars are being spent in a different manner using a different delivery method as opposed to the small one. On the electric side, you see that the numbers are actually kind of increasing over the years. And what we're finding is a couple things, because we have the same issue where we're kind of breaking up projects into small pieces. If you go into Exhibit 1A, you'll notice something. And so this is a reverse chronology. So the most current is on the top and it goes down from there. So you notice that the bids, if you look at the number of bids column for, say from December down to August, what you'll notice is that there's 3 or 4 bids pretty consistently for those projects. But the more current ones, March through December, you'll notice that there are really only 1 or 2 bids. So the problem we're having is we instituted this cap. It's a $2 million cap per customer, per contractor per year. And so what we're finding is the contractors are getting close to their cap and they're just stopping bidding. They're not even bidding anymore. So we're starting to see it in our pricing. And this is, I don't think this is good. I think we want more competition. We want everybody to bid on it. That way it drives the price down and make sure that everybody's still engaged. But that $2 million cap is actually stunted competition. So one of the things that we're going to be bringing before the board and council is increasing that from $2 to $3 million in the coming 3-year cycle or 3+ year cycle. And we think that will again foster more competition.
Why not 4 million?
So yeah, so Janet, can you talk a little bit about the sweet spot for something like this?
Right, so incremental, we don't want to jump too high, because we do want to make sure that we are giving our contractors an equitable chance at these projects. So right now, probably 4 to 5 contractors are hitting this 2 million mark. If we increase that to 3 million, I think we will be in the sweet spot. I think 4 million might overdo. We want to take incremental steps to see if we're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to foster competition, but we're also trying to give contractors an equitable edge across the board.
Right.
And so we think that sweet spot might be $3 million.
And there's one other thing that we're talking about right now is the tool that Michael's using, the design build tool. We're talking about doing something similar for electric. So right now it's available for water and wastewater projects that Public Works does, that same tool. Now that they've had a chance to issue a couple of bids and learn a little bit from that process, we feel like that could be another good tool. So we think that 1 is we have a little bit higher cap so we can get more competition. And 2, if we have the design build tool similar to water, then we can group some of these piecemeal projects together and have a larger project that a contractor would really be interested in as well. So those 2 methodologies are going to be coming before you over the next couple of months so that we can make sure that we're getting the best price and best value overall. Okay.
Do you have any other districts that do the same thing as the new methodology? Some other public utilities, they use the same methodology?
Public Works does. Public Works does it for sewer projects, and so they see the value of that as well. In terms of other utilities, I haven't heard of other utilities or like, do you talk to other like the Riversides and others? People have actually copied our master agreement.
I believe, I want to say Burbank and Pasadena are looking at our methodology. Whether they implemented it already or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so when we first did our master agreement process, which is pre-qualifying these contractors, we did that maybe like 12 or so years ago. Riverside found out what we were doing and they basically replicated it over there. So, it served its purpose. It's great, immediate response, very fast turnaround, small projects. But what we're seeing now is we now have some larger, like mid-sized projects that are kind of a gap issue that we really need to address, and that's what this other tool seems to bring. All right, and that concludes our update on this item, sir.
Okay. Item number 9, update on electrical system issues.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. I just have one update, and I just wanted to talk about lately, our crews have been very busy with outages related to metallic balloons. And I know we talked about it last month. We saw an increase, but boy, it's gone through the roof now. I would say, calendar year, 50% of the metallic balloon outages have happened over the last 30 days. So we've had 10 for the calendar year. 5 of them, or actually we had 9 for the calendar year, and 5 of them occurred in the last 30 days. So working with Melissa and our PIO office to continue our public service announcements. We're going to try to get creative in what we do educational wise in the schools, but it is a problem right now. And it has impacted about 5,000 of our customers. Our crews, it's involved wires down, and it's also involved some contacts made at the substation, which does impact a larger number of customers. So right now, our substation group is looking at continuing to cover with installation blankets along some of the busing that's in 4 of our substations right now. We've done a lot of that work already, but there's going to always be more to do. And it's, you know, Murphy's Law, the balloon hits where the installation is not. So we continue those efforts on identifying areas where we can insulate more in our substations and just keep at it with our public service announcements. So we will run those through June and try to capture the graduation period. And like I said, I'll try to get the word out as much as we can.
Janice, is the bill on metallic balloon banning them, is that still moving forward?
That is still moving forward, and I tell you what, it's a saga. And I, Norma, I saw you kind of chuckle a bit. I feel like every year there is a Mylar a balloon bill. And yeah, this year is no exception. What we're hearing is it's interesting. The balloon lobby is very powerful, and we're understanding that kind of what may be behind them as well are helium workers. And so, so it's very interesting the dynamics that go into play with this. But San Diego Gas and Electric is sponsoring the bill. The interesting thing about that, the material that they want to use for the balloon replacement is something that they have a copyright on. So it's just, it's tangled. So yes, there is a Mylar balloon bill.
Every year, balloon, they've got like lobbyists.
Oh, very strong.
Oh, yes.
So 3 years ago, no, 5 years ago, it was
I
like,
think it's a hot air.
it's not edited there.
Right.
They're very powerful.
I worked for Assembly Member Tom Daly. The last bill that was going through, we had our office filled with balloons, all the people that came in, leaving balloons for the Assembly member. It was absolutely filled. We couldn't walk through the office.
Yeah.
It's very emotional there, yeah, on both sides. So yes, there is, and again, each year we support it, and we're trying to work through it. Something does need to be done. It is quite a costly, up and down the state, it is a costly issue.
Oh, yeah. Okay, update on water system issues. Michael?
Sure. So you have your dashboard there in front of you. Going from blooms to drought. We are entering our second very dry year here in California, which puts us into drought conditions throughout the state. As you can see, that top, our storage levels, the middle one, the State Water Project, the Colorado River, both declining rapidly. The amount of water we have in storage in those reservoirs through our wholesaler. The far left one is our local groundwater basin, which is fairly stable, even though we're in very dry conditions here. And that's largely due to us, not Anaheim, not pumping groundwater for the past year. So that's why that has stayed so stable. The governor did issue an emergency declaration and executive orders a week ago for 2 counties in Northern California and that are far, far away from here. But since we are also in a drought, he said we can anticipate those executive orders being rolled out to other counties, which could affect us later on this year. So we're anticipating that, and we are talking about messaging conservation. We do not at this time right now anticipate those irrigation cutbacks this year as we had back in 2015. But we've got to see kind of what the weather, and what the runoff, and what the governor does over the next several months.
Thank you.
So the next update I want to provide you is up on the screen, or will be in a second. And this is an open house that we had last Saturday. So our first phase A of our groundwater treatment plant, the contract was awarded last night by City Council. They approved it unanimously. That was for the 4 sites. One of them is the La Palma complex site that we decided to do a neighborhood outreach on because we had several homes that are located right up against that property. The reason why we selected these first 4 sites in our first phase was because we had the room and the ability to put this treatment in. That's what we wanted to get these one going first. And so several of the neighbors came over and visited us, and in picture you see Dooku talking to some of them, explaining the project to them, some of the improvements we're going to be making on their back property line, which is adjacent to us, which was replacing a old chain link fence with a block wall, and they're very happy to hear that. And then here is a tour that we gave to Council Member O'Neill and our new city manager. This was a couple weeks ago. And so we toured him at Lanane Treatment Plant. We wanted to see that and some other facilities in District 6. And so we toured him. We had our chief water treatment plant operator, John Doolba, on the left of that bottom photo there. Showed us around the treatment plant, the reservoir, and he had several ideas of things that he would like to possibly do up there, but it was a good tour, good day. And then lastly, this here is called Adventure Lagoon. So it's hard to tell where it's out on the map on the left, but on Kramer and Mira Loma, which is over by the old Rockwell Boeing site, Orange County Water District has several reservoirs where they recharge basins, where they recharge Santa Ana River and import water to the groundwater basin. And they have a site that they are leasing out to a vendor who is going to put in these floating, floatable playground, like for people to go out there for a couple hours. So I took this picture yesterday, the one on the very top, and they already have it set up, and they're still waiting some permits and some things that they need to do to get it online, but they are anticipating getting online sometime this summer. I don't know if it'll be early, mid, or late summer, and getting that online as a music park for people to go in and play on the water park. So that is there, and they're working with the city planning department to determine what they need to put in and improvements they need to put in for that. I think that is all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Michael. Update on finance and energy resource items.
Great, thank you. First, we'll go over the finance dashboard for the fiscal year through March 31st. As you can see, we have electric up on the screen. Our revenue in March was a little softer than it had been in previous months. We didn't have the wholesale revenue that we had been enjoying previously, so we're subject to the softness in the retail market, which then impacted our revenue in March. So year to date, we're just shy of 1% below budget, as you can see on our total revenue. But conversely, we have a lot of savings on the expenditure side. We kind of went through some of those in the budget presentation and why we're seeing such savings on the cost side. So we're looking fairly well on the electric financial situation. On water, if you'll go to the next slide, it's still quite soft on revenue. It's we're still coming in short, and the cost savings aren't quite matching our revenue shortfall. It's about, you can see the net difference is about $1 million. So that's just being pulled out of reserves right now, which we do have ample reserves to draw from. So there's no real cause for concern. But if we want to go to the energy resources, our power supply dashboard, we'll kind of talk about a little bit what's happened in March. We did have a planned outage with Magnolia Power Plant that has gone longer than we anticipated. So it's still out. It's supposed to come back on Friday. They had just a myriad of issues. It was tripping. There were just a number of just one situation after another. They're finally removing the testing equipment this week, and so it should come back online. But so you can see on the bottom of the chart, our retail portfolio mix, that we typically have a large percentage of that is natural gas. Because Magnolia was off, we didn't have the natural gas resources to supply power. Additionally, with the softness in the wholesale market, in the middle section, you probably see it better on the paper version, but in the middle of that paragraph, you can see that prices hit as low as negative $1.98 per megawatt hour in March. We're seeing this more and more often where prices are negative in the power supply market. What that essentially means is power producers are paying us to take power from their power plants, right? when you have an abundance of sunshine, but it's not hot. You don't have any demand because of air conditioning, but you have a lot of solar that's generated. And it's the time of year when dams are fully producing because of snow melt. So there's just an excess supply of power in the market. So with power supply prices that low, our peaking plants didn't need to run. So again, we didn't have a lot of demand for our wholesale product. So you can see that in that middle graph right there that we fell short. The horizontal lines were our forecast for wholesale sales. The bar is what actually happened. So we did fall short in March, again, basically because of pricing, and we didn't have the supply available. So that kind of talks about what happened in March. With the resort coming back on on Friday, we should start to see an uptick in our retail sales. Obviously, the resort is a big part of our customer base, and so we will hope to see that hit our bottom line. And hopefully I know the governor said that out-of-state residents can come to theme parks, but the park has said that they will only accept California residents. So I do not estimate that we will have an uptick in hotel sales because it'll be local residents mainly visiting the park. So I don't think the commercial industrial demand will increase too dramatically, but it will start to come back. We've seen LA County hit the yellow tier. Hopefully Orange County hits the yellow tier soon, so more can open up. So with that, if you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. Update on administrative and risk services items. Jen?
Good evening and thank you, Chairman and Board. Included in your, I do have a couple of updates this month. Included in your package is the quarterly wholesale energy risk management compliance report. And this program helps to ensure that the wholesale energy related transactions are conducted in a timely manner while ensuring that the department's interests are protected and risks are minimized. I'm happy to report again that all transactions were within the authorized transaction limit. However, I wanted to point out that during this quarter, the Bowerman landfill gas plant was off for about a month due to the Silverado fire. And kind of some background, this project is a power purchase agreement. So we will not be involved in any of the cost recovery activities. We're not impacted by that. I just did want to highlight that. Peggy, if you could post the dashboard. I have the dashboard for you this evening, and even though the state capitol is closed, basically, except to the legislators and I think staff members, business is being done. There's a lot of proceedings that are being done and hearings that are being done via Zoom, and so work is progressing on the about 2,000 bills that were introduced this year alone. I've highlighted 3 bills this month and really have some good news. We just found out that 2 of the bills, SB 67, the Clean Energy Standard, and AB 64, the long-term backup electricity supply, which would have impacted our operations significantly, have become 2-year bills. That's really great news. That's going to give us some chance, to talk to the authors further and to explain what we need for those bills. They really did have the potential to significantly impact our operations. However, the water service disconnection bill is still in play. And this is the bill that would extend outages or extend disconnects from 60 days. Currently, we cannot disconnect a customer until they're 60 days overdue. This would take it to 120 days. So the whole water industry is working on this and trying to get something a little more workable, especially with everything that's going on with the current economic climate. Again, a lot of work is being done on that. Anaheim is not alone in our opposition. I think every water industry or every water supplier up and down the state is basically working this bill with us. So it's kind of an interesting time right now. There's just a lot of activity going on, but it's being done in a very different manner. So we're all having to be pretty strategic and creative of how do we get our messages out there. Moving over to the safety overview. Again, we have some good news. We're well under our targets. Similar to last year, our metrics are similar to last year, except we do have COVID in the numbers and a shoulder injury that we didn't have last year. But again, we're trending well, we're under our targets. The most common injuries, the neck and shoulder, back and waist, were due to strains and sprains. 2 of those were due to 1 vehicle accident. But the others, we are working closely with our staff on their, how can we prevent strains and sprains. It's kind of a continuous effort. And we're going out there doing inspections and just trying different ways to try to minimize those injuries. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you. Items by Secretary Dupuy.
Okay, for next month, we have a number of items. We have an urban water management plan. We'll have budget recommendation for you. We have a summer readiness presentation that talks about how we're preparing for our power supplies and emergency preparedness as well. And then an imported water supply update. I have a few updates that I wanted to share with you in terms of, first one is our tree power program. And we were designated as a Treeline USA utility. And this is something that the Arbor Day Foundation recognizes a number of utilities, but our tree power program, we've provided over 56,000 trees since 1990. And so it's a very popular program. It's been helping with the urban forest. And actually we have some photos. Next slide. Oops, this is not the, we had some residents who participated. And so I had a photo of folks wearing their masks and still receiving the trees. And so our tree power program was still very helpful in accomplishing our goals. This is just a continuation of what Michael shared, which is our city manager, and that's our water operations superintendent on either side of Michael. This is at Lanane. So as I mentioned to you in email, our city manager has been invited to our meeting next month, and I hope he said that he's planning to attend. So if everything holds up, then we'll have both Mayor Pro Tem and city manager joining us next time. Right. Do we have the next one is we have the high school scholarship program. And so I mentioned to you that it's a $5,000 scholarship opportunity. We have up to 3 board members that we can take as ad hoc committee members. So there's no Brown Act violation. And it's a great way to kind of see what the high school students are doing in terms of providing an application. And then we would do virtual interviews this time around to give the folks a chance to interact with the panel. And so right now we have Norma, who's expressed some interest, as well as Rudy. And so this is up to you, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to request any additional volunteers for this program.
Do we have any other volunteers? Great.
Okay. All right. So we've got 3. We've got Rudy, we've got Vince, and Norma. So Peggy, can you make a note of that? And then so what we'll do is we'll reach out to you to coordinate your schedules, and then we'll schedule the virtual interviews. Okay. And then we'll send you the applications as well. And then hopefully in May, we'll be able to do the recognition, either May or June, we'll do the recognition of the actual students. Okay. Last thing I wanted to do was share, we got an email from the Anaheim Elementary School District. So we provided EV charging stations for their buses that are starting to come in. And as they've done that, they responded to our staff. So hello, Christian and Shant. I want to thank you so much for walking me through the EV charging station rebate programs. As I'm sure you can imagine, the district is very happy with the setup and the potential savings it will bring to the district. Sustainability is something that is close to my heart, so I was happy to bring this type of service to the district. Your customer service was outstanding, and your patience with me while I got up to speed was much appreciated. If the district decides to go forward with more EV charging stations in the future, you will be getting a call from me. This is from their Director of Construction Services, Ms. Wister. So it's a good way, it's a win-win for us. You know, it's helpful for the utility, as you saw from the presentations. It's great for the schools. They're going to be able to save on their operating costs in terms of fuel. Also, you have less emissions from tailpipes. So I think this is a good win-win. So thanks to our staff for participating and coordinating with the school district. And that's all I have.
Great.
Thank you.
Items by board members. We'll start with board member Guyana.
I have nothing.
Okay, we'll go to board member Bala. Hearing nothing, we'll go to board member Norma.
I don't have anything tonight.
Thank you. Board member Vincent.
I have one thing. So I had a bunch of neighbors come up to me, right, I'm on the Westmont area. We just redid the streets recently when you guys did a bunch of work. 5G's coming in. It's been ripped up multiple times, including the street, my street, Lancer. We're about to do it again. Neighbors know who, actually, Jose Moreno and I both got cornered by a few neighbors. And the one thing they brought up, which makes sense, my understanding is right now they come back and they bring it back to standards. And so they've got these roads that are, they've been dug up and then they've been patched. That road was just redone by the city within the past 2 years. When we did the underground conversion. I think we might want to explore making it more painful, shall we say, for those people that are coming in to put 5G, ripping up streets.
Yes. So thank you for bringing that up. I'll say this, Public Works and these telecommunication companies aren't really friendly right now because this issue has been all throughout the city and really in the region. And there's numbers of reasons for that. Sometimes it's the way they do it. Sometimes it's the way they contract for it. One of the carriers, they have different groups. One handles fiber, one handles the pole. And so their timing is completely off. And this one group could be finished and then it'll be months later before the next group comes in. So yeah.
So my one comment on that would be from private industry. That's where I come from. When you make it easy on them, they don't care.
Yes.
When you make it expensive on them, all of a sudden things change and they become a lot more profitable.
Yes.
So I think you may want to consider making healthy a little stiffer and just packing.
Yes, and so that's what Public Works is doing. So they are looking at a couple of things. In fact, Allison is assisting them with some of those standards in terms of restoration of surfaces.
Yeah,
I live in your area.
Very good. AB?
No, just have one question about the status of teleworking as a public utility.
Sure. So when we were in the height of the pandemic, we were about 50% of our workforce was offsite for some period of time. Some of them were exclusively, some of them part of the week. And so with that, now that the city manager has asked that we start to come back, he's actually given us a date. So May 3rd is when the city is supposed to come back from telecommuting and be here, just like pre-pandemic. So it's been a process. Some people have been away for the majority of a year. And so it's a difficult situation. In some cases, it's a childcare situation. In some cases, there's medical issues. And so we're trying to work through that as best we can. And so our human resources department is helping along those lines. And we're communicating with our staff to make sure that we have the safety protocols in place, whether it's the plexiglass or mask mandates or whatever it happens to be. To make sure, but the vaccine has been available to all city staff, even as early as a couple of weeks ago. And the city had a special arrangement with St. Joseph's, I believe, to even give them a little bit easier way to get vaccinated. And so all the pathways are there for people to feel comfortable to come back. And those who aren't, we're still going to have to find ways to get them to be comfortable over the next couple of weeks. So in terms of future telecommuting, I think with private industries, there's many industries who are kind of migrating in that fashion for a number of reasons. And so I think eventually there's a good chance that we do some level of telecommunicating. But for right now, our city management has requested that we come back and let's get operational, and then we could talk about those things later on down the line.
Are you going to require or mandating, require each staff member has to be vaccinated? Or
no, we don't mandate vaccinations. We just give them every opportunity to have access to the vaccinations. So yeah, so there may be some people with medical or other reasons, if they're, perhaps they're pregnant, or could be a whole host of reasons. And so we don't mandate it. We just make sure that they know that where they can get it.
Thank you.
I think one of the keys to that is communication. For example, pregnant women is encouraged that they get vaccinated. And there's data that shows why they should. So, communication is the key.
Yeah, and we give them access to all of that information. We're also trying to balance what Cal OSHA requires in terms of safety protocols, so we're doing all of those things. So it's been a balancing act, no question, and some people are more eager than others, so there's kind of the emotional side of it that we're trying to address as well. So it'll be a process, no question.
Anything else, AB?
That's it.
Okay, I have nothing, so I'm looking for a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting. I'll take the motion.
I motion. I motion.
And a second. Roll call vote. Peggy.
This is a roll call vote for item number 15. Board Member Abdul-Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Barodi,
Aye.
Board Member Bala,
Aye.
Board Member Galana,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz,
Aye.
Vice Chair Seymour.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
We are adjourned.
All right.